Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. So, Tracy, we've already had a great pre-show conversation, but I can't wait to speak with our special guest today, Mike Bahun. Raised in the inner city Omaha by a single parent, Mike found a path out of poverty through sports, pursuing his dream of playing and coaching baseball. After playing at Iowa State University, he went on to coach at Iowa Western Community College, Creighton University, and Ohio State. Coaching allowed Mike to give back to the mentors who shaped his life, fueling his passion for supporting student athletes and organization. In 2009, while building his coaching career, Mike founded Fundraising University, helping high school sports and activity programs raise funds quickly and efficiently. Since then, the company has raised over 150 million for schools nationwide, and in 2020, he expanded through a successful franchise model. Welcome, Mike. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Wow, that is incredible that you've raised so much money. Fabulous. I'm sure you've impacted a lot of families and kids. So, right now, I would love for you to take us back a little bit. I just want to get an idea of how you yourself got into what you're doing now and how maybe your childhood shaped that.
Yeah. So, like was mentioned, I was born in an inner city situation, uh, in and out of the system to a degree, and with my mom, with my grandma, with my brothers, sometimes not, and the thing that I found for me was sports. The male mentorship that I didn't have, that my mom was amazing. Like, she had three boys and she worked at the same place for 30 years, and the most she ever got was $9 an hour when she ended working. And so there was that part missing for me, and I found it in sports. And the one time that I remember that probably specifically changed it for me is I remember I was 11 years old, and there was another athlete that I was pretty competitive with, and the kids went to they went to one of these things that I can't think of the word, where you
Clinic.
field trip. They went on a field trip,
Yeah.
and I had spent the night at his house, and all the kids went to the field trip except for me.
Oh,
And I was told by his mom that the reason I didn't go is we didn't have the $5 to go. And
Wow.
so I remembered that day of me saying, okay, well, that's going to change, right? And for me, what made sense for that changing, that I thought what the path was success in sports, but really what I found was a process in sports that gave me, that structure and that sense of community, the relationships, the system that facilitates growth is what I really found. And it's just really been the platform that I can look back on that moment, and then I can try to put and insert myself in as many of those situations as possible to help those same types of kids.
wow. Beautiful.
So, tell me more about, you said sports gave you structure, it gave you relationship, it gave you community, and honestly, it built your skills to some degree too. So tell me a little bit more about how it also developed your character.
Yeah. Well, part of my character was developed in being over competitive. We're in a society as males where if we win and we dominate everything, then we're the winner. And that was a part that I had to grow out of quite a bit. But I think just the little things, that being on time, doing more, working harder, being in a failure situation. I did three sports, but baseball is a very, very high failure sport. And
Hmm.
just learning how to deal with failure is what pushed me into one of the key concepts of Fundraising U. Is I had to learn how to focus on the process and not the outcome. Number one, because if I focused on the outcome and I compared my life to other people, I was losing mentally. And I had to not look at it that way. I had to look for the struggle. I had to look at my struggles and say, man, imagine when I get through this and it's three times harder than that person. When I catch up to them, they're going to be in trouble. And those three things together, the competitive part, the struggle and the process is honestly what gives me the confidence I have as a 50-year-old now. It's because it's like the dynamics of success don't change much, right? If you have a good plan and you have urgency and high expectations, you'll probably be successful at almost anything.
A good plan, urgency, and high expectations. That's awesome. That's good. That's good stuff.
What's interesting to me about this conversation is how you were in a precarious situation, a difficult situation, in and out of the system, struggling mama, you know, with grandma, with mom, all of those kinds of things. What's interesting is how you embraced the ongoing struggle. In fact, believe that that struggle is part of who you've become. So tell me why that's so important to teach, to learn that the struggle makes us who we are, and to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, a lot of it comes from my training as a coach. You know, I've coached for 30 years and I see what expectations on kids is doing to their confidence. I've seen it for a long time and I really don't like that, right? And so we have to learn how to build confidence, right? It sounds good, you know, if they're confident, if they're not confident, or I mean, but nobody has a plan to build confidence.
Mm-hmm.
We just talk about it like it's this evasive thing. Oh, confidence landed on my lap today. I'm confident, right? But actually what confidence is it's the process, right? And when you can take the outcome out, and I wasn't, you know, again, if I wasn't comparing myself to other kids and what I had or didn't have, if I wasn't not good enough to be that kid or that baseball player, my family wasn't good enough to be like, I had to look at what I could be good at and turn out all the rest of that. Because if that is what I focused on, I would have went down the same road as everybody else around me. And so I had to win that game. And, you know, I was the fortunate one because, you know, I never did drugs because I didn't go to school and college and see kids having fun with drugs. And that was my perception. I saw the end result when I was a little kid, like the end result. And I knew very quickly what I didn't want to be. Like, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So for me, that was just all strengthening, and I could see things at a very quick age. I think it's one of the things that helped me develop emotional intelligence and being able to connect with people is because I've had to read people for a long time and develop this skill. Like, okay, what's behind this? What's the truth? And the other thing that did for me is that, you know, I don't want to say it forced, but in ways that I wasn't aware of, it forced me to have a relationship with God, because those are the, you know, the tentacles of what God tells us is to struggle and focus on the process and be obedient. And when I just did that, you know, it didn't happen right away, and it still doesn't happen right away. But I know that if I do those things, that I've always come out on top. And so I'm looking for that. I'm looking for the hard, because if when I get through that, the other person's not going to be standing there.
I love that. I love that. God tells us to focus on the process. So I have a question about urgency.
Mm.
So I hear from a lot of business owners that their employees like don't necessarily have this sense of urgency. Can that be trained?
I think it can be built inside the institution and accentuated, right?
Mm.
So for example, you know, you can have a culture where you train that culture to make fast decisions, and inside the process, they could be taught to work faster, right? You can manage their schedule. We have a concept in Fundraising U called the 168. It's the 168 hours in a week. We don't schedule 1 hour meetings, right? We try to prepare 4 meetings in a shorter period of time because it builds in the urgency. And if I have small little tasks, they build momentum and urgency based on my planning. So I think you can accentuate it, right? I think you can accentuate it in your system on individual behaviors, and I think you can come over the top of it and build it. But I do think a little bit of it's how we're wired, but I think we can coach it up and make it as best as possible. Like the gentleman I have that's our business manager, he was a NASA engineer and he's brilliant. But if I don't have some urgency attached to his work, he'll just think about it for 6 months. You know, and so just little things like that of us working together. My mentor told me something I always think about: if you want something done, find a busy person.
Yes. So true. It's so true. And the engineering types do tend to be overly analytical. So timelines really do work. I'm in the software business. I've learned that.
Yeah.
The, the
We built our own
hard,
custom ERP, so I definitely know what that's like. Yeah.
so it's interesting. I want to go back to this pain thing and how pain really does develop who we are. Do you think kids today have not had enough pain or don't understand pain, that we've made life a little too easy for them? And how do you get into what the pain could be so we can grow and we can evolve this mindset that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like, especially if we're using kind of sports as we talk about, I think it's easier. I'll use my daughter, Faith. We went to a volleyball tournament this weekend, and those kids don't necessarily have the pain that I did as a kid, like what I seen and what I did, but they have this pain of expectation, right?
Ah,
They have this idea that they're all there to be Division I players and everybody's watching them. And now even more so, it's all about me, 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 me. And so I think this comparison thing is we're going to look up in 10 or 15 years and it's already happening. And I think it's going to be detrimental because God talks about that. Like once we start comparing ourselves to things, we're losing. And it
mhm,
facilitates a model for that. So I think they have their own pain. I think it's more emotional. Not that mine was necessarily physical, but the reality of the danger was different, right? And it
mhm.
was more tangible. So I think we do have a lot of kids at more risk than we can see it. We can define the inner city kid and what they went through, and there's a story there. I think there'll be a story someday about these kids being damaged around expectations in an improper system within sports.
Wow. I hadn't thought, especially social media now,
Oh,
painting a picture of a life that's so perfect, and these kids, thinking this is truth and needing to measure up to it, and that success comes effortlessly, right? You just post something and you're wealthy or
right.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm a blogger. I'm a blogger. Yeah.
Just stand next to a Louis Vuitton bag and you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
you're complete. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. So talk to us a little bit about, if you had a message to parents, to entrepreneurs, franchisees, to those in sports or some other activities, what message would you like to get out there?
Be good at the hard things.
Ooh.
Right. Yeah,
Good at
be good at hard, not easy. Right? When you're good at the hard things, and we can train that to a degree. Like I can manage my time to do the hardest thing when the day starts. I can sign myself up for the hardest task. So to me, life's all about obedience. And then in being obedient, if I can just embrace, and my own expectation is that I'm looking for the hard thing to do, then my growth will be infinite. And it has been that for me. Instead, as parents, it's natural. So that's the challenge. And I see all these great parents, back to this youth thing, you know, they want to make things easy for their kids. And I
Mhm,
understand that they love them and they want what's easy because there's nothing worse than seeing your kids struggle, right? But you got to have something in place to be okay with that. Like, well, I'm looking for, like my daughter Faith, she plays at the highest level. And because she's at the new highest level that she's grown into, she doesn't play as much as she would like. And she thinks that's a catastrophe. I think it's the greatest thing that could happen to us because we have to
mhm,
go out every day and compete. We don't know if we're playing. We have to do the little things to get better. We have to, and inside of that, right? What am I trying to build inside of looking for the struggle? I'm trying to build ownership
mhm,
because when I take ownership and I have this ownership spirit, then the world looks different to me. The guy who taught me the ownership spirit when I was a over competitive 26-year-old that everything was a competition, for me, he put his arm around me one day and he said, Mike, no one can hurt your feelings without your permission.
cool.
And I thought about that and it's true. So once we are okay with struggle, then struggle gives us ownership. And once we have ownership, our perspective changes on what's out there. When it's all up to me and, oh, I lost, but I learned. I won. Okay. Right. If it's all about this growth mindset and you're looking for the hard, there's more growth in that. So if all I'm focused on is growing in the process, these results will come, the money will come, the accolades, the team, the credentials, they'll all come inside of the process of growth. But we want to speed that up and we want to manifest that and we want to get to the shortcut and we want to, it's not there. I mean, it's just not, just for me, like I could go out and get help for this business sometimes, and it may take longer to get to certain places, but I would rather I go through that and learn what it is than hire it out. And that's not to take anything away from consultants. I do that. And there's a time for that. You can buy wisdom and get faster to a better result. That's what consultants are brilliant at. They're brilliant at that for a business. But for me, even inside of getting that coaching, I would still want them to make me struggle to see what happened and how I got there. I wouldn't want them to just transplant me there. And so I think that's where the growth is. And I think your conversations change, right? Like my daughter doesn't get in the car. And first of all, I don't ask her about it unless she talks about it. But I don't say things like, man, look at how many points you scored. Or I say things like, when your teammate was struggling, I really appreciated how you went over and gave her 5 and lifted her up.
Wow.
That's the score we're keeping. There's a scoreboard on that they have, but we have our own scoreboard.
Wow.
There's so much here to dissect. I have like a million questions, but I'm going to go in one particular direction. How does everything that you're talking about with how you deal with these young athletes and their development in their minds, how does that pertain to sports psychology?
Well, I think, there's sports psychology, and I've spent some time training in that, and then there's mental skills, right? And I think people have to know the difference, right? Most of us need to develop mental skills. So like in Fundraising University, so they don't always have to hear me. We have a UFC fighter named Brogan Walker, and she's a female fighter, and she goes into the octagon, and there's nothing more intimate with her mental skills than going into a ring with another woman. And so she teaches that to us, and it's super important. And I think realizing that, sports psychology is like, to me, it's like general psychology, and you guys are the experts. So this is just my version of it. So I have to go back and find, where there was a disconnect, and then I have to coach you through that, right? Inside of mental skills, once I've done that or before I get there, I'm actually going to be building in the behaviors by having specific concepts that I teach into, like my daughter. One is process over outcome, right? One is leadership and culture. And so we have all these different things, mental imagery. And so we're using and developing skills that she can use all the time in an active way. Like it's almost like having a trainer that's working on injury prevention rather than going to the physical therapist.
It's interesting because I keep bouncing between the athlete and business and how many of these things really apply to both, really. So if we're teaching it in sports or in the arts or in whatever it is, we're teaching these things in business, it kind of overlaps. This mindset or growth mindset, I think you call it, is particularly important, and getting good at what is hard, if that's the idea. It kind of reminds me when I look at my to-do list in the morning, I put the hard stuff off in the afternoon because it feels good to cross off a whole bunch of those easy peasy stuff. And then what happens is I get further and further behind because I didn't do the hard piece first.
And think about the mental part of thinking about it over and over, and how much not damage, but how much more is there that could have been just not even part of it because you attacked it first.
Yeah. Never mind the time saving and the energy that I've used worrying about it. And then by the afternoon, I'm exhausted and I don't have the same capacity that I had when I'm fresh and it's in the morning. So these things apply to business as well as sports or life in general.
Good point.
It's championship performance mindset, and that's universal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And I think scripturally it talks about, that life isn't supposed to be easy peasy, that the struggle really is part of the plan, the master plan to refine us and turn us into good human beings, right?
Struggle
Um,
is real.
what's that, Tracy?
Struggle is real.
The struggle is real, and if we embrace it and we actually look for it and we develop our mindset in such a way that we see how we're getting better and better at certain things. I want to talk about something that we talked about pre this conversation, kind of pre-recording, and you talked about the 10 axioms of choice. Can you share with us a couple of those and how that applies to both sports and other endeavors as well as business?
Yeah, basically the axioms of choice are just the realization from both parties, right? Like I use it a lot from a leadership standpoint, and that I help go through this 10-step process because I'm trying to understand that whatever we see the issue is, like, right, like maybe someone in our organization doesn't trust us, or maybe they're having financial, they're questioning the financial decisions. Well, you work all that back to something in the relationship problem that they've had, right? It all will go back to, so whatever the current problem is, a past relationship problem. And so when you can understand that and you can take people into that, but it's very delicate to enter into that. You have to learn how to develop skills. Like Pastor Craig Rochelle is my favorite. He's got a thing on this where he teaches us how to, most people ask the question like, well, hey, how come you're questioning our marketing, right? And then I'm going to win. But he teaches you to ask 4 questions about the same thing and really get underneath and find that. And unless you ask enough questions, you'll never get to that layer. And inside of that layer, there's a relationship. Oh, well, the last company I worked for, I lost $400 in a marketing thing. Aha. Okay. Now we're talking. And now not only can I take that away or shrink it, right? Mostly shrink it and sometimes take it away, but now I can get somewhere, right? Or else it's just coming back again later. It's just in a different form, right? And so that's what the axioms of choice is all about. Is it's all you can do is give another person is information. All we can do is behave. All behaving is based on past and present experiences. And so when you can recognize those in other people, and it doesn't become, I'm going to tell you the way it is and convince you, right? And it becomes about understanding like why they may be behaving this way, and showing empathy for, why that behavior is still part of the relationship, then you can actually change lives and not
That's
just give them an answer. You know what I mean?
that's amazing. It makes me want to take like an inventory of myself. And like it's inspiring. It makes me want to take an inventory of myself to see like, okay, what needs to be refined? What needs to be, fixed, right? Is it meant to like inspire?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
The relational component is amazing to me. Um, that that kind of is the, I don't know, foundation core of it. And oftentimes we're asking peripheral questions, budgetary questions, resource question, human resource skill question. We're not asking what is causing us to behave in a way that is not garnering the results that we want, whether
That's
that
the outcome. That's the outcome place we get stuck rather than in the process. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it does become a form of psychology when we look at that relational component. I would guess, though, those kinds of questions, Mike, where we're looking at the axiom of choice, um, those can be kind of personal questions. How do you get there?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lady that we have in Dallas, I had dinner with a couple franchise owners, and she's an Indian lady who uh, works on relationships, um, on many, many different levels. And she was kind of giving her opinion on our Friday training calls because she felt like they kind of had a like, I'm going to teach you how to overcome it tone rather than I'm going to try to understand why you're stuck. And she made some really good points. And so what I told you is what I'll tell her is the same. What we can do is we can facilitate a process that makes people struggle and then have a system that invites them to share. And we have that inside Fundraising U, right? We do bring on and certify them in a concept called ownership spirit, because essentially what the ownership spirit is, and we have a Dr. Dennis Deaton who teaches us that to us weekly, is it teaches you how to recognize almost as a third party to your own thoughts. And then you can sit back and think about that and then make a decision, right? Like we have this skeptic, one of the characters that we have in the story is the inner skeptic. And we learn how to flush that inner skeptic out because we can recognize it because we have a process to question it rather than it's just there, right? So we do things like, okay, that inner skeptic comes up, you don't listen, you talk instead. Like you don't listen, oh, you're not smart enough, you're not. Instead, you say, I'm gonna do it, I am here. I paint a mental image of what that looks like. And we're teaching that on a weekly basis to our people, because I feel like if you win the mental battle, you'll win the skill battle.
Yeah.
But if you try to fix everything with skills, I'm going to be better at selling, I'm going to have better marketing, you'll always lose. And so we're in the people development and people performance business. And all fundraising you do is because it's a small business. It's just facilitating growth in human beings. Same way baseball does.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Do you have a transformation story that's maybe one of your favorites?
Yeah. So we have a gentleman named Stuart, and it's all back to the axiom. And I used the whole strategy. So he came into our business, and obviously you only get part of the story, which was just mentioned. And I didn't know this, but he had failed with another franchise system. He had owned a very big one. He had owned like 8 of them. They were building a house. His kids were young. He pridefully wanted his wife to be at home. He was a Christian guy, and they just believed in those values. And he just would not trust what we were doing, even while he was successful. It was just constantly. And so one day he missed a step in getting himself paid. So he didn't get paid. And so now the wife's upset. So that's not good. So I'm wanting her on the phone, right? But I have this decision. Do I point out that he's wrong and I'm right, that he didn't get paid, or what do you do? And so it turned into them opening up to me about all the things that I didn't know. And you could just feel their voices change, like, hey, we're in financial trouble. And so they didn't even really understand how near success was for them. So I was able to come up with the plan and lay it out. And I just said, look, if we're going to react to everything, we're going to lose all the time, but we got to win tomorrow. Right. And so I even broke it down into AM and PM routines for them. So we could learn how to measure that we were winning, because they were so wanting to jump to the end to get caught up for all this stuff. And so then he was the rookie of the year for us. And now he's up to 7 territories. He bought 6 more, and they don't have any more financial problems.
Wow. That's amazing.
Another cool one was, and this is a little off, but in the same. So I'm in Atlanta, and we had a rep leave us. And so I fly from Kansas City. It's late. I'm running around with all these materials, trying to catch a flight. And I'm in a really bad neighborhood. And this mom comes up to me and she says, hey, and it was kind of aggressive. And I thought, oh boy, where is this going to go? She said, I wanted to thank you for helping out with the fundraiser, because if my kid didn't sell these 20 cards and generate enough money for me to make a payment, then he wouldn't have played football. And that means he would have had nowhere to go after school for 3 hours in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and I needed to hear that. Came at the right time.
Yeah, perfect. So
Purpose.
it is. It's definitely purpose-driven business. So tell us more about the business. We've learned so much about you, and I want to keep talking about you, but I want to learn about the business itself. What does Fundraising University do?
So we're a service business. So we have people that work from home, and they go to schools. And the problem that they're solving is typically an activity, a sports group, an elementary school, whatever it may be, they're going to get about 30% of the funding they need only. So they're left with coming up with the deficit. That deficit could be I mean, at a large school in Las Vegas, even 2 months ago, we had to raise $25,000 just so they had enough helmets and pads for kids to play football. And this is at an affluent area at a 6A large school, and they were the state runner-up. And so, we're going in and from a service consultative base, we're wanting to shift their paradigm by using 5 very specific dynamics inside a demonstrated service to come in and essentially what solves that problem, which is lack of funding, is the 2 things they want to do. They don't want to do it. So we're going to come in and do it fast. And we're averaging $400 per student in gross sales in a 1-week period of time. So if I have 100 football players, I have $40,000. If I have, there's variances to that. And so that's essentially what we do is we're coming in and we're providing the funding from equipment, more coaching. Kids get it. I mean, we've had kids that they've gotten a nicer bus and they've never been on a charter bus to go on a trip. We've had, any and all of that stuff, and everywhere in the middle. For me, when I got exposed to this, I was at the school where I went to school, and the state rule in Nebraska was every kid had to have the same jersey. And the year before, half the kids didn't bring back the jerseys, and we didn't even have enough money to get jerseys to be eligible to. And that's the first time I'd ever fundraised, and that's where it started. So that's kind of what we do. So, the people that embrace that, they're not just athletes, they're people that want to do good.
I want to do good. And you don't just help sports teams, you also do other activities. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, the music departments are a huge one, right? They usually have, they're a 200-person band with 1 person. They don't have 10 assistant football coaches, and they need a ton of money. The cheer groups are not funded by schools at all in most cases, and they're the most expensive. We've trips to Washington through the the DECA group. We've done stuff with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We've done stuff with the ROTC. So really any student that participates in something like that, which all of them should, we can help out.
So you actually go in and take the fundraising off of out of the hands of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
We have our own technology, our own products, and then we have people that we train very, very specifically on how to do those 2 things. Do it as fast as possible to eliminate the resistance. And then, if we can raise $400 per student or more, then, now they're moving into it, and it's little stuff that might sound silly, right? But it's a big deal to kids. Some of them go on, like, they didn't have the $400 to do a golf, a go-kart racing tournament that was team bonding, and the kid who didn't feel part of the team, now he's forced in this group and now he's got friends. And it sounds little, but when we're in this, society where these kids are constantly compared and they don't know where to fit into, sometimes just giving them the experience to be in these groups. I don't care what it is, be in the robotics group, be on the football team. Like, I don't care, but let's be part of something.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said earlier about what you got through sports was community, relationship, mentoring, a confidence building, character development, all of those things. But if we don't have the funds to do some of that, we miss out on all of those things.
Absolutely.
So I want to backtrack. How do the students take ownership? Do they participate in the fundraising, or talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I talked about shifting their paradigm. So what that means specifically is we've all experienced traditional fundraising and the resistance, right? Your nephew comes home with a $35 magazine that you don't want, right? You buy all these cookies from the school that you don't want to pick up, and it's like, it's noise, right? And so we're shifting their paradigm on what you've experienced in traditional fundraising by bringing the dynamics that are set on top of the culture of what activities and sports groups should be promoting. Planning, expectations, urgency, team building, rewarding. And so we're taking them through those dynamics. And then what we sell really becomes an extension of that process. And if the coaches or the teachers the band lady, if they lead those dynamics, now we have kids that are inspired to go out and ask people to support that. And so they become our people that go out, and we use technology for safety. We're not going door to door anymore, right? They have a link. We help them make a list. We help them identify people that could help them, that want to help them. We messaged for them to reach out and how to reach out and advocate for themselves. We educate them on why are you doing what you're doing, right? Because it benefits you.
Mhm.
And that's all part of that. And, you know, when we approach it that way and we use those dynamics, then people want to be part of that. And we go from a transaction into transformation. And, you know, that's a balance that we have, that's
Mhm.
strategic for us. And we don't make any money. This is the best part, right? Like from a business standpoint, like we don't charge them anything up front. There's no upfront products. There's no minimums. You don't buy anything. We just have a success fee related to their results. And so we have a vested interest to teach them how to perform. And because of that, we have a 92, I think we ran about 2,700 schools last year in 40 states. And we had on the spot 92% reoccurring relationship where they're signing up for the next year on the spot.
Wow. Fabulous. So, Mike, if people want to be part of Fundraising University and all that you have going on, how do they reach out?
Yeah, and I actually do a lot of that. I know that's not traditional to have the founder, and I have really great people that have given me advice that maybe that's not the way to do it, but I chose to do it. I don't think there's anything more important I could spend my time on than finding the right people. I don't know how that could be delegated.
Where
So
do
they
they
can reach out to me. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, directly. Okay. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. If what you hear gets you excited and you want to be part of that, then I want to hear from you.
What is the email that they should contact?
My email is just my first initial, which is Mike, and then the letters B as in baseball, A as in at bat, H as in home run, U as in umpire, N as in no hitter, and then
Excellent.
at fundraising and the letter U.net, or you can call my cell phone directly at 402-680-5029.
Wonderful.
Love it. Love it. This is an exciting conversation. I love that you allowed us to go deep in the conversation around a growth mindset, doing the hard stuff, becoming good at the hard stuff, taking ownership of our lives and our future, dealing with the process instead of just the outcome and how to get there. These are some life-changing things that you are teaching your franchisees and, of course, the students at the same time. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mike.
You bet. My parting thing to people listening is it's the start that stops most people.
Isn't that the truth?
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Oh, truth. And Tracy, you and your final words.
Just the fact that I really so appreciate the fact that you took things that you've been through in your childhood and you transformed your experiences into something like this, which has such great magnitude and depth and length of reach. And you're impacting hundreds of thousands. You will be impacting hundreds of thousands of kids, families, communities. So thank you for the work that you're doing, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, that means a lot from you with being a book writer and all that. Those are kind words. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you to those listening in today. Make sure to comment, like, and share Mike's interview today. And of course, we'll see you next week on another episode of the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged.
Thank you.